I saw like if you position yourself the right way, you can pretty much have pretty much whatever you want in life, you know.
Welcome back to another episode of the Journey to Legacy podcast. Today, I am interviewing Mr. Wade Simmons, the CEO of Wade in the Water Productions. And Wade actually has his own mortuary company as well, not just this film production company, which he ended up talking a lot about because it wasn't easy for him to actually start his own mortuary company despite having been in the industry for almost 15 years. He had some challenges, he had some setbacks, but he pushed through. That's a lot of what we talk about today. So if you're facing challenges in your life, if you've ever come across something difficult that maybe you ended up giving up, putting on the back burner, well, Wade's going to talk about how to actually push through with his real world experience running multiple companies. So I think you're going to enjoy. Let's hop right on into the episode with Mr. Wade Simmons. Wade, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I am doing wonderfully, my friend. Kick us off. Tell everybody just a little bit about yourself.
All right, so I'm Wade Simmons, born and raised in Chicago. I am an independent filmmaker, and I also own a mortuary transportation company. I've been in the funeral business for 13 years since high school, and never thought I would be owning my own mortuary removal service, but just life kind of happened, and so that's kind of where I am now.
Yeah. It's funny to hear you say with mortuary business that life kind of happens, right? Like that's sort of the name of the business right there. And so you're running that and you're running a film school at the same time. And I mean, you're still a pretty young guy, but you said you've been doing the mortuary business for 13 years?
Yeah, since high school started. I was a senior in high school. I remember my teacher, because like back in high school, like I had a really good teacher named Miss Anderson, and she knew that I wanted to be a funeral director, so she called the funeral home that I used to work for, and the owner said, "Well, wear gold tie, wear a white shirt, come to black suit." And so for 13 years, I was coming ever since, and for the most part, it was a pretty good experience. Met a lot of people. Like I said, I'd spent a lot of my Saturdays, Fridays, my weekends. I was right there at the funeral home, but I ended up getting married like last year, and so like that wasn't like it was interesting how even that happened, but it kind of ended up causing me to make some changes and some changes that I was going to make, but it just happened a lot sooner.
Yeah, gotcha. You're saying so, I mean, 13 years in the business, you started while you were in high school. A teacher sort of helped you to get into it a little bit, or sort of to take that next step.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
gotcha.
Yeah, but I mean, but while I was but see the thing about me being in the funeral business for 13 years, I mean, let's be real. Like I thought I probably would have been licensed a little earlier than I did, but it didn't happen that way. Like I ended up finally getting into mortuary school like 2016. By 2017, I had to start the program over. Finally, by the grace of God, 2018, I came out, but then they had like this exit exam. I call it the exit career exam because it caused a lot of people to like really walk away because a lot of people wouldn't realize that, but in that business, it's a lot of great people in it, but it's like the process to getting licensed, depending on what state you is too. Like it can be kind of gruesome in a way, but I mean I understand why they do it, but it's like come on. But anyway, like at one point I was considering walking away from it because like for like 7 months after school I was taking the exit exam and I wouldn't pass. And so I'm like, you know what? If this don't work out, I'm gonna have to go to school for something else. I'm like, so I went to like this veterinarian school, and I remember seeing like a dog on one leg and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't think I can do this. Like this is just not my thing. So I went to Las Vegas with my uncle and worked with him and doing some plumbing for like a couple of weeks. And I'm like, well, my grandfather was a master plumber. My uncles are master plumbers, but this is just not my thing. So I remember like even seeing one of my former classmates. His name is Ali Cat the rapper. I remember like seeing him still doing his music because like I remember when I was in high school, I remember seeing him like rapping with a couple of other friends, and I'm like, he's still doing it, and and he's still up and coming and doing his thing. So maybe I should go back to pursuing my dream of being creative too. So in the meantime, I remember praying to God, and I'm like, you know what? If I'm gonna go to school, it's gonna be for something that I actually like, something else I like. And so I ended up going for film school. And when I went to film school, like it's like the rest is history. Like I started making connections and friends, and I started producing my own web series. Like right while I was in film school, and by the time I graduated film school, I had already produced like 14 shorts.
Nice, nice. Dude, Wade, I mean, so much to unpack here, and I sort of want to break it down piece by piece, sort of just to see what your motivations were and how you were moving forward. Right? I think that's a lot of what we talk about on the show is just overcoming different challenges. Because especially in entrepreneurship, there's constantly challenges. I mean, in generally in life, we need to learn persistence, right? We need to learn how to be able to fight through and overcome obstacles. And so to hear if I got this timeline right, 2016, you started mortuary school. You said 2017, you had to start over. What
Yeah.
happened?
Well, so the program was really hard, and I'm not saying this, but like I'm an adult, but I also kind of, I learn a bit differently. So like I do have like an IEP, and like, unfortunately, like at the time, the program just didn't really cater to that. And that was kind of really bad because it's like, I've been doing this way before I went to school for it. So I know what to
Yeah,
do. I know how to do it, but it's just like sometimes the academic side is not too much different, but I think sometimes it's like some people are more hands-on learners. Some
yeah,
people are more visual, some people are more audio. And unfortunately, it's kind of like, this system we kind of work under a lot of times, like when they test people, it doesn't mean that people don't know what they're doing. It's just, everybody's just not a great test taker, you know?
yeah. That makes perfect sense, right? And it's always so interesting, especially what you said that hands-on learning. You've been doing it for so long, but then it can be so different than like actual formal education. That's something that
Yeah,
I struggled with growing up as well. Right? I was always
yeah,
way more about let me get into a job and start doing something and learn that way
yeah.
versus sitting in the classroom and taking tests.
I
Before
agree.
sort of before I move on sort of about this, like you said, it was difficult. So you had to start over in 2017. I'm dying to, I'm so curious, man. Mortuary school, even just in that business, how'd you decide to go that direction? Like when you were still in high school, you said you were like enjoyed it, you had some sort of passion for it. That's not the first thing that came to my mind in high school.
Well, to be honest, my passion for it actually started in elementary school. I went to school on the west side of Chicago.
No way.
And I remember I used to talk about it a lot. And I remember this young guy named Terrence Matthews. I think we were in seventh or eighth grade. And he says to me, "What, you want to be a mortician or something?" I said, "No." He says, "A funeral director." I said, "Yeah, that's actually what I want to do." So, it took some time because I actually knew some morticians also from church. And I remember they took me back, to kind of see things, and they even had offered me like to work for them. They would pay for me to go to school, but I had to sign a contract, and I'm like,
Yeah.
uh, you know,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's gonna work out that way.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I've always been the person that knew what I wanted to do. Even I remember being in high school, right? Freshman year. I remember we had a teacher, Miss Jackson. She had us write a plan out for our life. And in my plan, I remember I said that I want to be a funeral director and I want to be a film director. And by the grace of God, I was able to pursue both. But the funny thing about when I ended up, struggling to pass that test in mortuary school, like right while I was struggling, I'm like, you know what? It's been 7 months. I got to do something different. And
Yeah.
so right when I decided to enroll in film school, right, you won't believe what happened. I passed the first part of the funeral director test. So I was
Okay.
like in film school, but I was still going out to the other school to take the test because again, like some people to say, you can do multiple things, but I never lost sight of what else I was trying to do. Because I remember being in film school, like I was telling everybody, you know, as much as I love filmmaking, right? I understand that that is a very, let's be real, like everybody is a filmmaker nowadays because we got TikTok, Instagram, we got all this good stuff, right? And that's a blessing. But however, so like in that business, it's like you have to really learn marketing because filmmaking is not just entertainment, it's a business side to it. And so for me, focusing on the business side, I'm like, wait a minute. If I position myself right, I can fund my own projects.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
never lost sight of, me getting my license to be a funeral director either, but I'm the type of person that like in spite of, you have to keep moving forward
Yeah.
because time is precious and it doesn't wait for anybody. So you have to be really quick on your feet.
Nice. Absolutely. You'll be really quick on your feet. Interesting that a couple things that you're talking about is that, somebody would tell you you can't do multiple things at once, right? But obviously you're proving that differently. So I'm curious to hear about that. But then
Yeah.
also, right, you're saying that, especially in filmmaking, everybody wants to be a filmmaker, right? Everybody believes that they can, but so much of it is marketing. You chose to sort of position yourself a little differently, and that way you can actually fund your own projects, which is amazing. Also, so let's go to when you finish mortuary school, right? The tests are difficult, right? Are different than what you expected, and you're down and you decide, okay, I want to maybe start to pivot and look elsewhere. How did that decision making go to decide, you know what, this passion I've had my whole life, maybe I need to do something else? I'm sure that wasn't an easy decision. How did that decision making process go for you?
Well, it was tough because again, like I live all the way in Chicago Heights. The mortuary school that I went to was all the way out in Wheeling. So like imagine this, Midway is closer to where I live in Chicago. O'Hara is like the like kind of like the main airport in Chicago, and that one is like where the school was out that way. So, and then too, like a lot of times I used to take bus, train, like because I right now I don't drive, but it was like something. So like I was really dedicated. So it's like I'm going out here doing all this, and like nothing is happening. And my friends like, man, like Wade, just give it up, man. Like even some of the people that went, they like, look, man, this is just it's just insanity to keep going out there and going out there. So eventually, I'm like, you know what? If it doesn't work out, okay, I have to accept the fact. But it's like, what else can I do? And so again, I'm like, if I'm gonna do anything else with my life, I'm gonna find something else that I really enjoy doing. So film ended up being that thing. And so when I went to film school, like I had a really good time. I met a lot of cool people, and man, it was like man, this is awesome. And so when I got to film school and I saw we had access to equipment and all that stuff, I'm like, wait a minute, while I'm here, before I leave up out of here, I'm gonna make a whole bunch of movies. I remember one time the school was trying to stop me because at one point I think my grades was like in a few classes like my grades weren't really that high, but I'm like, wait a minute now. I came here to be a filmmaker. Come on, man. How hard is this, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a business job. It's like all this other stuff. Come on, like I've already took a lot of these courses and stuff. Come on. And I'm like, so I ended up talking them into like not stopping me from doing my projects, but by the time I graduated, I had made about 14 shorts already.
Nice. I mean, it sounds like you started just doing what you were passionate about, right? What you were
Yeah,
there for instead of just like the actual classes, which I think is an interesting piece of what we can learn and take away here for life and business is to just start doing, right? So take this chance. Everybody believes that you have to have a certification these days, or you have to have you have to be trained, have the education. Whereas, no, if you're passionate for something, start doing, and then you're going to
yeah,
learn through doing, right? You're a perfect example that through mortuary school, right? A business that you've been running successfully now today, you've been in this space for 13 years. You didn't start with the education. The education, getting the certification, is something that actually almost stopped you.
yeah. You know what? It's funny you say that because So right after I got married, right, like my wife, she's very like she's very into financial literacy. And it was funny because like she's kind of opposite of me, like as it were me. When I was younger, I said I wanted to be a filmmaker, a mortician. My wife is just like, I said, well, what did you want to be when you were young? She's like, look, I want to be wealthy. I don't really care so much about the industry that like I want to be. She wanted to straight up like, okay, I want to be a boss type thing. So like, having her in my life kind of helped me to make, decisions that I probably would have made a little later in life. But it was a blessing because like, when I started like, paying attention and, talking to her about a few things, like it was always some things that I wanted to do, but she showed me like, if what a lot of people don't realize is like when you become an entrepreneur, that's not something that they're really going to teach you. That's kind of something that you have to learn because it's like sometimes you can be like, oh, I've been doing it this way, and then I could have been doing it this way, and this way is a little more beneficial. So it's just about what really makes sense. And so like so in the mortuary business, when I had left my job, I started just kind of doing like little stuff with my film and stuff like that, and I had a little money coming in or whatever. But what ended up happening was like I left my job December 1st of last year. But in that time, I was waiting on my license to come because, like, in Illinois, for some reason, when you fill out to get your license, they took like I filled out to get my funeral director intern license back in May of the year before last, and then I finally got my license in February, like right after my birthday. So then I was able to be able to do a little bit more in the funeral business. So I went back, but this time when I went back as my own, you know, because I got a somewhat of a
Your
license
own
now. So it's
business.
like,
Yep.
but the funny part about that I didn't get to say was that in the funeral business, there's two tests that you have to take. In the state of Illinois, some states you can be an embalmer, which is the person that prepares the body, make sure that the body is treated so that you take the blood out so that it won't smell and lose discoloration and all that stuff. And so basically, after I finished film school, now this is the funny part. I had a dream that I passed the embalming side of the test. And so I got up, I'm like, okay, God. So I went out to the school and I took the test and I finally passed the other part. So they finally released me so that I
Mm.
can take another test, which is ridiculous to get licensed. It's just but by the grace of God, I do have my intern license, so I'm finishing that up, and so I'm licensed in Illinois, but I come down to Missouri a lot, so I'm working on getting my license in Missouri too.
Nice, nice. Still moving forwards, and so many things are standing in your way. It's beautiful that you keep saying by the grace of God it's happened. And I said you had this dream. You're like, all right, this is some sort of message that I got to go back. Keep on moving forwards. Something that you mentioned earlier, Wade, is that while the tests were tough, and you decided, you know what, let me potentially make a pivot. You went and thought about plumbing. Sounds like that was a family business.
Yeah, yeah,
A
my
lot,
uncle.
your uncle, okay, a lot of people get pressured into family businesses or they get pressured into doing what their parents did. I'm
Mhm.
sure you had those pressures, but you ended up not going that direction. Tell us some more about that.
Well, so I remember now. This was funny when I went to because my uncle plumbing business in Vegas, and they're doing really well down there. But at the time when I went, I remember like it was just one customer. She was really mad at my uncle. Well, he didn't do it, but I guess, at the time, some of the workers he had, I guess the lady was like, I guess I don't know if they messed up something, but my uncle, and in business, I don't care how good you are, things happen. And so the lady was like chewing them out. And when I went to the house, I guess I got the gift of gab or whatever because she was chewing him out, but me and her was having a great conversation. And it ended by like when he got through working at her house. She said, when you come back to Las Vegas, you come back and you visit me.
That's so funny. Nice. I guess it says a lot about your personality, right? Nice.
so
That's yeah, go
so
ahead.
I know that I'm a people person, and like, being a funeral director is, anybody that does that work, I would say it take a special person because let's be real, because passing the test and having the license is one thing. But to actually have the personality for the job is not, because there are people that's licensed that are not, may not be as friendly. You'll be
Of
surprised.
course. Yeah, no, I'm sure. And so you're out in Vegas, right? Like trying to work with your uncle a little bit. Like how even before like that time, how did you decide like, you know what, I'm not gonna follow in the safe path, the path that's already laid out for me. I'm gonna go back and keep pursuing my dreams.
Well, when I saw them tearing walls out of people's houses and doing all that, because see, with plumbing, it's like a measurement thing too. And so me, it's like I know myself. Like if I'm a person and I'm not really into something, it kind of drains me. So I mean, everybody, we get in a situation, we do what we have to do, but it's like, this is just, yeah,
Gotcha.
this
So
is not my thing.
it just felt more draining to you than actually
Yeah.
sort of giving you energy, lifting you up. Nice, right? So everybody's listening. We got to make sure that we're not doing things to give others energy necessarily, right? To please your parents, your family, to please society. That's what I mean by give them energy.
Yeah.
Do things that inspire you, lift you up. And that's why you went back to mortuary school and then also why you pursued filmmaking, right? You said while you were still in like elementary school, you had written that you wanted to be a filmmaker also, huh?
Yeah, but really that's the thing, right? Like none of what I'm doing just happened overnight. Like it was like even with being a filmmaker, right? I used to do photography. I would take my video camera to school. I actually want to make a documentary with some of the footage that I have from elementary, but I was always writing, stories and making up stuff. And it's like, when I really look back on this, like I know that I was meant to do this because everything just kind of worked out. And even with filmmaking, right? Like right after I went to film school, I ended up wanting to do a documentary on pro wrestling. And so when I did that, I reached out to a guy by the name of Steve Boz. He's a very well known wrestler in the industry. He has a wrestling school because, like, I didn't even know this, but the professional wrestlers that we watch and stuff, a lot of them they were trained by somebody like at a school like WWE. They call it like the training performance center. But anyway, I met Boz and I by the way I wrestled in high school, so I'm going there to make a documentary. He says to me, when you gonna start training? So that led to me and a friend of mine named Jalen. We started training and we hung around it for 2 years. I didn't really have I didn't have a whole lot of time to really devote to it because it's like I'm doing this more as a hobby as to where some of the other people were doing it as a career, which some of them are doing great and some of them are in AEW and wrestling all over, different places going to traveling state to state. And I love being around it, but it's like I kept seeing the bigger picture, like, I'm an entrepreneur. And I know a lot of times that, and let's be real, like a lot of people don't want to talk about this, but see, I feel like when you put other people over you, you limit yourself. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times they're going to limit you. They're going to tell you when to stop, when to go. They're going to tell you that you're on this level and not this level. But when you're hungry and you realize to have that drive yourself, right? Like I love watching nature, right? My favorite animal is the crocodile. And I tell people that because what I like about the crocodile, right? He's not like the lion. See, the lion is on the land scoping out and chasing his prey. But the crocodile, when the opportunity gets too close, they snatch it. And so to me, I kind of had that mentality with the things I want to life. Like because sometimes people, and I'm not trying to be negative when I say that, but I've seen it in professional wrestling, I've seen it in film, I've seen it in the funeral business, and so I realized that whatever you want in life, like we're not gonna be here forever. But if you really want to do something impactful, then you have to be intentional. And like a filmmaker, you have to really sit back, analyze your life, and be like, okay, I got to be the director, the producer, and well, let God be the director, like if that's what you believe, like I do. But you have to have that passion for yourself because other people are not going to try to really push you. And the reason how I know this is because, like, for instance, a lot of times, like, the people that I see that's like really doing big things, like, I notice a lot of people will be like, oh man, that's this person. Like, that's like, some of the people that I've met in pro wrestling, like Sky Blue AEW. We trained with her, or she trained with us, or whatever. It's another up and coming wrestler by the name of Axel Rico, young Latino guy doing pretty good in the industry. My big boy Levi, he's doing great with the manager role. But it's like, to me, everybody is destined to do something. And so, like, to me, it's like, you have to know what you want, and you have to know what you want from it, because not everybody wants the same things. But when you know what your ultimate end goal is, then you work according to that. And so, to me, it's like, yeah, I could stay and train for wrestling, but it's like, okay, I've already been here and I've already been kept here. I'm not gonna do that, you know. Because if I do it the way that I'm trying to do it, then anything else that I want to do would just fall in line with
Yeah. Wow. You're saying that, yeah, each individual person needs to know what they want, right? What their purpose is. Others can't decide it for them. But
it. Yeah.
how interesting that I would have never guessed that a mortuary and film producer would have tried pro wrestling. But I also love that because there's a big time marketer and social media influencer. His name is Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V. And he talked about trying different things, right? How are we supposed to know what we're meant for or what we're going to enjoy if we've never even tried it? We've never
That's
even
true.
explored it, right? And so now your metaphor, or how you're saying your favorite animal, is alligator, right? It's so interesting that, be patient, watch what's going on in the world and in your surroundings. When an opportunity presents itself, be ready to strike, right? Be ready
Yeah.
to try it out, give it a chance, or else you're just never even going to know. Now,
Yeah.
before our interview today, I asked you a few questions, and one of the key lessons that you mentioned was to take a chance. Share a little bit more with everybody about that.
Well, so I call myself the chance taker because, to me, I worked in the funeral business for 13 years. We bury 1 year olds, 2 year olds, 3 year olds, 80 year olds, 100 year olds. And I always say, like, we're put here for a time. And you have to really, like, really sit back and look at life and say, you know what is it that I really want to do? Because a lot of times, I don't think people really sit back and analyze what everything is, but literally everything just about in this life is a business. I mean, we look at entertainment as entertainment, but it's a business. A funeral, a funeral service is a business. And so a lot of times, it's like when a person really just stand back and educate themselves on certain things, you'll say, okay, if I'm going to be able to make a living for myself, why not make a living doing something that I love and enjoy? And a lot of times, like with the entertainment business, a lot of it gets kind of a negative connotation because of what goes on. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the entertainment business is really nothing but funding. And so, really, it's not about how creative you are, none of that stuff. It's really about you being able to get the funding, or you being able to fund it. And if you have enough resources, then you have the liberty to create things, produce it, and put it out. Because, again, like, anybody can do it. It's just that a lot of people just haven't really been introduced to that, because it's like a lot of people feel like, man, I got to wait on this and wait on that. But if you save, if you just find ways to be creative, you can do it too. It's not
Nice.
impossible.
It's not impossible at all. What a great perspective that you realized, right? You know what? Everything, and when you're talking about take a chance here, you're talking specifically about take a chance almost in business, right? To take a chance on
Hmm.
yourself in business because you realize at a young age, everything in this world, honestly, it's a business. Almost everything is, right? Unless you're Literally absolutely everything can be a business. Of course, there
Yeah.
are free things in the world that you don't have to pay for that aren't
Oh
controlled
yeah.
by an
Yeah.
organization. But overall, take that chance, right? You can have your passion be your income instead of you
Yeah.
having to have a other job, right?
Yeah. But I think a lot of it is just that people just don't, sometimes see this or they feel like it takes more work. But this is my thing. If you I like how the Bible talks about like a wise man builds an inheritance for his children and his children's children. And I know that that has a very spiritual meaning, but I look at that also naturally, right? That, you have to not only think about yourself, if you have children or family, you got to, you also think about your offspring too. Like, I mean, your life is your life, but the decisions we make as people affect those that come after us. And so, like, to me, like, I know that, like, again, a lot of people, like, feel like, oh man, like a lot of these young people out here now, they don't want to work and that. No, it's not that they
Yeah,
don't want to work. I think the thing is that the young people have been blessed with knowledge. And I think that when you pay attention sometimes, like this is what I like this one guy said. He said if you focus, you pay attention, you listen, and you follow direction, you will be great at anything. And I kind of really believe that because it's like, paying attention is just really important because, like, even with the funeral business, right? Like, when I decided to start my own, I remember somebody telling me, like, oh, nobody's going to use your company, but my company ended up doing pretty well, did a lot better than I expected, actually. And like I said, and that's the thing, like I tell people, you're an entrepreneur, things are gonna speed up, it's gonna slow down and all that, but when you still think about it, you still come out better, you know. And I always say, like, you try to have multiple things going for yourself, but most people they get their main income from doing like one thing really well. And then that one thing kind of stems into other things. So,
there it is. Yeah,
I'm still, I haven't got everything together but for the most part, it's fun, and I mean for the
yeah.
most part, I'm doing pretty well.
Having fun, man. Oh, I love it's so important. Have fun with it. There's usually one thing that brings most of your income that can then stem off into others. There's this idea they say that like, oh, every millionaire or billionaire has at least seven streams of income. Well, it starts with one. It starts with
Yeah,
one really well, and then it branches off, right? Have a lot of focus in this. And then what else is interesting though that you're talking about here, which I think is a great transition as we're sort of wrapping up the episode, is that you said, I think it was a quote from the Bible, something around that a wise man actually will be the inheritance for their children, right? Something along those lines. Remind me what it is again, but tell me a little bit about legacy and what legacy means to you, because that is sort of right what we're leaving for our children, what we're thinking about future generations. Maybe it's
yeah.
wisdom.
Well,
What do you think?
so I would say that, well, it starts with thinking about this. We have to have food, shelter, clothing, all those things, right? Have to pay bills or so. My thing is that if anybody that's a parent know that when you have children, you have to provide for them. And so to me, it's like, why not set your children up you know, to have something that they could pass along? Because again, I'm not against anybody working. Like, if God bless me to become a parent, I would want my children to work, have a job, do things like that. But I also want them to understand in life what are their options. I like how my wife put it. My wife always said, if you don't explore what your options are, you don't know what's out here. And so to me, I just think it's just good to kind of let people see that there is options, there are alternatives, and you don't have to just go along with the norm. You know, you don't have to limit yourself because, like, aside from reading, like I do spend a lot of time like watching like documentaries about like Walt Disney. I watch some even about like Tyler Perry, Spike Lee. I look at a lot of things like about Snoop Dogg and people like that. For the
Learning.
most part, everybody that has ever did something like really big, they just took a chance. And like even with professional wrestling, like I've seen people because like we had practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so like there were some people there Tuesdays and Thursdays. I kind of just went when I wanted to because it was more of a hobby for me. But I saw like if you position yourself the right way, you can pretty much have pretty much whatever you want in life, but it's just sometimes I think people get a little scared because it looks impossible, you know.
Position yourself the right way. You can have pretty much whatever you want in life. And to all of you out there listening today, thank you for being here. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Guys, thank you so, so much. If you liked today's episode, please share it with a friend, share it with a family member, a colleague, anybody and everybody that can get some value. Help us to grow the show, help us to grow Wade's brand, his business. Man, he talked about some great stuff, all based on real life experiences, right? And I love his positive attitude the entire time. If you didn't get that energy, if you just listened to the audio, check out the video. He is such a great guy that is just persistent in his passions that are different than most of ours, I think, but nonetheless, persistent to reach success, persistent to pursue what he likes doing. Everybody out there, thanks again for tuning in. And if you are listening today, chances are good that the Journey to Legacy community is still free to join. Please join us, a group of like-minded entrepreneurs, all working to help each other to get better, to eventually leave a legacy on this world. Check out the Journey to Legacy community over at journeytolegacy.org. You can find it down in the show notes below. Until next time, my name is Wayne Veldsman. You've been listening to the Journey to Legacy podcast.